Hare Krishna. Welcome, dear devotees. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are back here again, celebrating this wonderful book, The Bond of Love. And today, it's such an honor to have with us Her Grace Dinatarini Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Dinatarini Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisances.
Please accept mine. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's truly an honor to be here having this conversation with you and discussing and hearing about Srila Prabhupada. Many of us know Dinatarini Prabhu is not usually on this public forum giving talks or lectures, but we were just discussing before we came on live how Krishna's mystical potency worked, and she agreed to do this interview with us. We're very grateful to Shruti Rupa Prabhu, who was very instrumental in facilitating this interview for us. So thank you so much for accepting this invitation and being here. This is a sharing that we're hoping can nourish the hearts of Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis for many, many years to come.
Yes.
We'll connect with Srila Prabhupada through these videos and through so many other videos that are there. But the bond of love, I felt, was a very special, and we were having this talk before. It's so much about how devotees felt in the presence of Srila Prabhupada. Dinatarini Prabhu, you've spent most of your life in Florida, and you've been
No.
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 Tell us a little bit about how you were introduced to Krishna consciousness.
I will. Can I wait until I start talking, because that's part of how I'd like to introduce you to Prabhupada.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Dinatarini Prabhu has authored this wonderful book on Yamuna Devi. And she's also right now authoring the book, The Study of Seva Puja.
It's an advanced copy.
Wow, beautiful. We can get our hands on this.
Yes, soon.
So watch out. We will definitely be advertising via newsletter. And for you that have not read Yamuna Devi, The Life of Unalloyed Devotion, please get your hands on that copy. It's one of the most beautiful books. And of course, if you have not got the copy of Bond of Love, please, we'll have Shamasaki Devi post a link here to both Yamuna Devi and Unalloyed Devotion and Bond of Love here in our chat box for all our viewers. So Dinatarini Prabhu, please tell us, how did you get introduced to Krishna consciousness, and how did you join the movement, and then this close association that you had with Yamuna Prabhu? We're so eager to hear about this.
Okay, thank you for having me. This has actually given me an opportunity to reflect on aspects of my own journey and spiritual life that I perhaps have not thought about as much as I, in the recent years, as I could have. I would like to speak about how Srila Prabhupada became seated in the core of my heart. It was a rocky journey, especially in the beginning. I grew up in a very had a very traumatic childhood and upbringing. And as it's described, that 4 kinds of people aspire for understanding in their spiritual life. Those who are inquisitive, those who are searching for knowledge, those who are suffering, and those who are looking for some kind of wealth. Well, I was certainly in the suffering category. And I remember being a teenager and asking all of those very pertinent questions. Who am I? Why am I suffering so much? Where am I meant to be? These were at the forefront of my heart, but I remember at one point praying that if there was a God, because I had been agnostic by this time, and if you are there, there is a God, please show me the easiest path to come to you, because I don't have the patience, I don't have the wherewithal to study the different yogic processes and everything else that's involved, the path of knowledge, the path of philosophy, any of those paths. So very fortunately, I was given a Bhagavad-gita at a rock festival in the spring of 1970 by the devotees, wonderful devotees from New Vrindavan. And when I read that Bhagavad-gita, all of my questions were answered. Everything was answered in it. It was truly remarkable. It saved me getting that first book of Srila Prabhupada. And as I read it, I was very naturally, because I had grown up in such a difficult environment, I was very much closed off, very independent, on my own. I had no father figure, no nurturing in life. So I was very closed off in many ways, but I was very determined and very independent. And I decided, after reading the Tadvidi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya verse, that you must seek out a spiritual master. Well, there was my spiritual master right there in the book. And the only address I had was the publisher address, which I believe was 65 2nd Avenue in New York. Of course, I had never been to New York, but I immediately went up to New York. And I share this because it was ironically humorous at the time, that I went up to the temple and I knocked on the door, and this young brahmachari answered the door, and I said, "Excuse me, but I'm looking for a bona fide spiritual master." And he said, "We've got one, come on in." Just like it was, just like I was a vacuum cleaner salesman or something. So I went in, and my way was, because of my own upbringing, my way was that anytime something became too difficult or overwhelming to me, I would leave. That was simply my way. So I lasted in New York maybe 2 days. It was just something overwhelming to me. The city, the rats, the poverty, everything about it. And I couldn't stay there. So I went and got a job, and then I tried a few months later to join in Columbus, Ohio. Same thing happened. I think I lasted a week there. And there was some upheaval in the temple at the time. Some devotees had been put in jail for Sankirtan distribution. And there were some other problems. And so my way, I just left. Things become difficult. I left. And then I tried again a few months later to join in Denver. And I think I lasted 2 weeks there. It was mainly a householder community, and I was not a householder. And so I left and I went back to Gainesville, Florida, where I was living. And at that time, I wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada. And I said, what is the position of someone like myself who likes the chanting of the holy name, likes the process of Krishna consciousness, but finds living in the association of devotees very difficult? I sent that letter to that same address in New York, and it wasn't answered for 3 months, but the devotees had kindly forwarded the letter to Srila Prabhupada in India at the time. And I had decided in the meantime I was going to go and try and join again, this time in Tallahassee. And on the way out to the road to go to Tallahassee, we stopped at my old mailbox. And in there was this little blue air letter. And I knew immediately it was Srila Prabhupada, because I didn't know anyone else overseas. And the air letter said, after the introductions, in order to become successful in this process of devotional service, 3 things are required. He said, first, you must have enthusiasm. And then you must be determined. And he said, and finally, you must have patience. And then he said something very poignant. He said, if any one of these 3 things are lacking, you will find the process, or you will find progress very difficult to achieve. And then he honed right in on my particular problem. And he said, so please try to find this patience. Just telling you, if you're going to make progress, you have to learn all these 3 things. You can't just be enthusiastic and determined. But if you're not patient, that this is a process and that it takes time, and that you will go through a journey of ups and downs, then this will be very difficult. So I was very encouraged by that letter. I ended up joining, but one of the difficulties of many of us in the West, many devotees in the West, is that we didn't really know Srila Prabhupada. We had the books that he had written at that time, but knowing him as a person, knowing his personality, was not really part of our ethos at that time. And therefore, for myself, it became very easy to become dogmatic and even overzealous. And this was true for others as well, understandably. And so over time, I became discouraged because what we were perceiving of Srila Prabhupada was simply that he was this fount of instructions, that you do this and you don't do this, and this is Krishna and this is Maya. For us, there was no gray area. You were either Krishna conscious or you were in Maya. So I became very discouraged. My faith began to be impacted. And I decided at that time that I had to see Srila Prabhupada. I had to find him and I had to see him to see if he was really like what I had dogmatically understood within my heart he was like. And this would determine whether I would be able to move forward in my devotional life or not. And so by Krishna's grace, I had some inheritance. And I immediately flew to Mumbai, to India, because I knew he was in India. And within a few short days of arriving in Mumbai, Srila Prabhupada came. And to say that it was a revelation to be with Srila Prabhupada, it was transcendent and ineffable. His nature, seeing him, being with him, being able to serve in some capacity near him, changed my life forever, because I realized that Srila Prabhupada was a person with a wonderful sense of humor, of course, amazing charisma, pure Krishna consciousness at the highest level. There was one wonderful thing that happened in those early days in Bombay, as we called it then. We were in Juhu Beach. There weren't many devotees there. And one of the wonderful things was that every evening, Srila Prabhupada went up on his roof and he sat in this beautiful asana. And anyone could come and sit with him, anyone. There was no limitations at that time. And so we would sit with him every evening. And if you go back and look at the incredible photos that Vishaka Devi took, Yadubara Das filmed, you can see how special it was. They are my favorite pictures to this day, because Srila Prabhupada was so relaxed. He was so vibrant. His health was strong for him. And much of the time he would reminisce with devotees about what it was like in New York and in the early days, and he would just speak. And then he had this humor that was extraordinary. this almost, it's very difficult to describe. Words can't describe really what his humor was like. It wasn't a dry humor, but he had a way of playing on words, like demon crazy, and words like that he would use to transform the meaning of them into something very real and poignant to us at the time. So this changed me totally, because by getting this perspective of Srila Prabhupada, my faith increased, my desire to serve increased. It was a life-changing moment. And I got to travel with him, some around India, to Hyderabad, to Tirupati, and then to Vrindavan. So the last month, unfortunately, I had surgery in a charitable hospital in Mumbai, and my health had gone downhill from there. So by the time I got to Vrindavan, I was quite ill. But that was when I first met Yamuna Devi. And I didn't know her well at the time because she was preoccupied. She was going through her own crucible, if you will, of challenges and difficulties and trying to serve Srila Prabhupada in extraordinarily difficult circumstances. But at the time, the women had no place to live. And so Srila Prabhupada allowed 5 of us women to live in what became his prasadam room, his eating room, in his kutir there. And Jamuna was there, but she would leave very early in the morning and go about her services. But I could see that she was very much preoccupied. So much had gone on. It was a difficult time for her. Those of you who have read the book, the Unalloyed book, I spoke of it in detail there. She also speaks of it, her time there. So I left of course, this was the most difficult time. Srila Prabhupada thought the temple was going to open. It was far from ready. It was a construction site. He became very ill. He became very disturbed with the devotees at the time. So at the end of that summer, I left because my health had just crashed. And I thought, well, if I can get Yamuna and God Sister Madhura to come to England, where I was at that time, for some little respite, then when she goes back, she'll be, feeling better. So I sent tickets, and that was how I began to first spend time with Yamuna. So there's a long story there, but ultimately, she decided and I decided that we were not going back to India. So unauthorized by the GBC and Srila Prabhupada, we left and went to Oregon with the plan of forming a women's ashram, because during these years, they were very difficult for women. And looking back on them now, I understand so much more, because when you're in the thick of things, sometimes it's difficult to process everything that's going on. But if you understand that those of us from the West, we're coming from whatever culture was there was extremely liberal, independent, and limited. And therefore, for us to try, because we had Srila Prabhupada's books, we knew what he wanted, but for us to try to be circumscribed into the Vedic paradigm as both men and women, whether you were sannyasi, agrihasta, brahmachari, brahmacharini, it was extremely difficult, because we have to understand we were all very young. All of us, the men and the women, we were taking on tremendous services, trying to serve Srila Prabhupada with all the sincerity in our hearts. But we still had the unfortunate fact that we came from such a background And it was difficult to make that transition and for us to understand what was expected of men and what was expected of women. So there were a few years there that were extremely challenging for women. And therefore, Yamuna and I decided we're going to start a women's ashram. We really, finished through that. So we went to Oregon, and as soon as we got there, there was this barrage of calls and letters and from GBC members and leaders in our society. There was a lot of blowback. And they would say, you've lost the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. You've left the society of devotees. All of these things would come out. And we didn't feel that way at all. We felt very happy. We had a little trailer that we were in at the time, and had gotten a cow, and were worshiping nicely. And Yamuna was working on her cookbook, and it was very, very sweet for us. But we couldn't get out of our consciousness that what if everything they're saying is true? What if we've lost the mercy of Srila Prabhupada? What if our spiritual life is finished because of his displeasure within us? So it so happened that Srila Prabhupada was coming to Los Angeles in the summer of '75, and our dear godbrother at the time, who was very, very helpful to us, Jagtirtha Das, arranged not only for us to come down there, but he arranged that every morning from 3:30 to 4:30 in the morning, we would get to sit with Srila Prabhupada in his rooms. And often it was just us. Sometimes other leaders would come, but very often it was just us and Srila Prabhupada. And I remember being so fearful going to that first meeting. I have a memory of standing behind a pillar just crying, just huge tears, because I knew that just unequivocally Srila Prabhupada was going to, split us up and put us in some other position, and we wouldn't, have our women's ashram, and because that was what everyone was telling us. And we went into Srila Prabhupada, and from the very beginning, he shocked us. He completely blew our minds, so to speak, because he first started very lightly. I remember the first thing that he did, we were climbing the stairs after him. And the stairs to his rooms in Los Angeles are narrow and very steep. And I remember he was getting towards the top of his stairs, and he turned around and looked at Yamuna, and these big tears were falling from his eyes, just falling from his eyes. And he said to her, "I missed you very much at the Vrindavan opening, the opening of the temple." And so, already we were flooded with tears, and we went in, and then he started asking us about our ashram. He said, "So you're living in, what is your ashram like?" And we said, "Well, right now it was a small trailer. It was, single wide mobile home. And the one bedroom was the temple room. And then everything else was done in the one main room." And then he asked, "Do you have a veranda?" And we said, "Well, yes, actually it does have a veranda, Srila Prabhupada." And then he said, "How much do you pay for it?" Well, we were a little bit proud that we had gotten it so inexpensively. So Yamuna said, "Only $100 a month, Srila Prabhupada." And his eyes got very big, and he said, "So much?" And we said, "So much?" And he said, "My rooms in Vrindavan, I only pay 5 rupees a month, So in this way, he was bantering back and forth with us. And we became very serious, and we placed before him the questions that had been coming to us about not receiving his mercy. And we said, "Srila Prabhupada, they're saying that because we're not in the association of devotees in ISKCON, we have lost your mercy. And because if that is true, we've lost your mercy, we can't live with that. So please direct us as to what to do." And he said, you Westerners are always so restless. Why are you always wanting to move like that? And then he said, and then we said, but what about the association of devotees? They're telling us that, our spiritual life is finished. Srila Prabhupada became very serious. I'll never forget the look on his face. And he said, association can be 2 or 200. And he said, if you are 2 and you're compatible, you can go back to Godhead. And if you're 200 and you're not compatible, and then his eyes became very big again, and he said, no one will make any advancement. We were
Wow.
So there were more questions that related to our position there. Srila Prabhupada asked the leaders in Los Angeles to send young girls and women up to be trained in deity worship and in cooking from Yamuna, and that happened a few times. But then something extraordinary happened the next time Srila Prabhupada came to Los Angeles. We were taking care of a lovely young devotee at our ashram, and her affianced, who she was to marry, was part of the BBT. Srila Prabhupada was not feeling very well at the time, and he was in Hawaii, and they were in a BBT meeting. So at our ashram, our mood was that we want to do whatever, because by then Sri Sri Radhabana Vihari, our worship of the deities, had been installed. We were performing deity worship. We were engaged. We had cows. We were fully engaged, and we were thinking only, Srila Prabhupada is not well. If he came here, we would take care of him. We would move into a travel trailer, and he could stay in this time. By this time, our landlord, who was very fond of us, bought a brand new double-wide mobile home. And so that became the new temple. So we were thinking like this: if Srila Prabhupada came, Yamuna would cook for him. We had wonderful flowers and the fresh cow's milk and so many things. And of course, we knew that that wouldn't happen, but we were thinking like that. And one of the things that we did is that every 2 or 3 months, we would send pictures of our deities to Srila Prabhupada. So somehow, as it happened, and they were recording this meeting, this BBT meeting in Hawaii, someone brought in a picture of Sri Sri Radhabana Vihari during Chandan Yatra. And Srila Prabhupada looked at them for some time, and then he said, let's go up there. I want to see how they're doing. And it was, you could hear this collective gasp from the room when he said that, because at that time, Srila Prabhupada, there were many temples now in the United States, and his itinerary had been carefully planned out. And everyone was so anxious. Everyone who had done so much amazing service was so anxious to have his company, his association, his presence. And so when he said that, let's go there, one of his servants started sort of peppering him with questions like, well, Srila Prabhupada, we don't even know if the roads go there. What was one of them? Srila Prabhupada said, we don't care. We are sannyasi. We can go anywhere. And so questions went on like this, and Srila Prabhupada was determined. He wanted to go, and they were trying to discourage him in every way possible. And one devotee finally said, well, at least the prasadam will be wonderful, because Yamuna is cooking. And Srila Prabhupada said, we don't care. We're sannyasi. We can go anywhere. We can do anything. So from that meeting, the devotee kindly saved the tape and sent it to us. I still have that tape today. And for us, it just enforced within us the protective element of Srila Prabhupada, of having Srila Prabhupada as our spiritual master, that even within our situation, some devotees may not have accepted or appreciated it, but Srila Prabhupada was protecting us. So all of a sudden, we started getting all these calls, and saying, I don't care what you have to do, but you have to come to Los Angeles, because if you don't come, Srila Prabhupada's going to come there. And I think at one time in the tape, Srila Prabhupada asked, can they come to Los Angeles? And one devotee said, well, they have the deities and they don't have any money. They don't have any funds. And Srila Prabhupada immediately said, we will pay. We will pay. And then he said that they can bring the deities. They can bring the deities down. And so that's what we did. And again, our dear God brother, Jayatirtha Das, arranged for us to meet Srila Prabhupada in the morning. But at that time, Yamuna was so clever in this way, because at that time, they had arranged certain devotees who had performed different services to sit with Srila Prabhupada in his garden in the afternoons. And that was very restricted, very limited, according to how many books were sold or how much work was done, and so many other factors. So one morning, as we were going down to Mangalarti, Srila Prabhupada was saying something to Jamuna, and Jamuna said, Srila Prabhupada, I just am so happy that we get to come here and sit in your garden in the afternoons with you. So no one could say that we would not be able to. Srila Prabhupada said, yes, that's very good. That is very good, like that. So, yeah.
So wonderful. So wonderful, Dinatarini Prabhu.
Yeah.
You emphasized so many beautiful points here.
Yes. I'd like to speak a little bit about what is so important about devotee association and finding, as I said, I spoke a little bit about my upbringing, and I really didn't have very developed social skills. Naturally, I had never been trained in anything in my, youth and growing up. I had never known others of my own age, of my own peers, who had the kindness, the compassion, the qualities of a devotee that are so much aspired to by all of us. And when I met Yamuna, that was the second great blessing in my life, because everything that I lacked in that way, she had in such abundance that it was extraordinary. Just to speak a few words about her from the very beginning, I would say first, she had unflinching faith in Srila Prabhupada. He was the cynosure of her eyes. He was her all in all. She was devoted completely and wholeheartedly to Srila Prabhupada. And yet she had this extraordinary charisma. She was one of those people that when they came from the very time I knew her to the end of her time on this planet, when she would walk into a room, everyone would be drawn to her. And she had that ability to make each person she connected with feel like they were the most important person in the world. She had unlimited compassion. She had depth of kindness that is very difficult to find in this world. She had a wonderful understanding of what Srila Prabhupada expected of us. She had true humility. Anyone who knew Yamuna knew that she did not like to be honored. She did not volunteer herself for kirtan reading or giving philosophy lectures or anything like that. It was always Srila Prabhupada asking her, Yamuna, you sing, you lead. So she was, for me, another kind of spiritual master, in the sense that she taught me how to be a civilized human being. Whereas I felt like before, I really stumbling through life in many ways. So it was very fortunate. I was very, very blessed to have her for 37 years as my devotional companion in Krishna consciousness. And interestingly, Srila Prabhupada, the very first time he saw us, he said, I think you two are good together. He said, stay together for the rest of your life, you know. And he protected us, as I was saying before, you know, that as this was a very difficult time for women, and which was the reason we went to Oregon in the first place. And I remember that Srila Prabhupada would sometimes tell us one thing, and then he would say something else to the men. And I remember in one instance, he was very, both in letters, if you look back at the letters, and in person, he didn't want us to have any association with men. Like even on this tape, they said someone was saying that, Vibhati Nandan Swami had said this about their ashram, and Srila Prabhupada said, man has been there. He was very, very adamant at that time. And we realized from the very beginning, because even in 1976, the leaders in Los Angeles were trying to get us to move there. And they were telling Srila Prabhupada, if they come here, there's so much more facility for preaching to the women and, you know, spreading Krishna consciousness in that way. And Srila Prabhupada would not agree. This particular devotee was just waiting for Srila Prabhupada to say, yes, okay. And Prabhupada never said it. He would never say that. And so finally this devotee, and I won't mention his name, but he'll remember this, I think. Finally he said, all right, Srila Prabhupada, I can talk to them later about it. And Srila Prabhupada said, no, you're very emphatic. No, you do not speak to them. You are sannyasi. You do not speak to them. So we recognized that we felt extremely protected by Srila Prabhupada. Others may not have understood, but we felt it within the core of our hearts. We knew that Srila Prabhupada was personally protecting us, personally caring for us, personally guiding us. And we have felt that way throughout our entire lives. And so by the grace of Srila Prabhupada's unlimited, ineffable compassion, I find that coming to this point in my life, I am just filled with intense gratitude that despite the fact that the journey of Krishna consciousness is, Srila Prabhupada once compared it to snake-like. It's not a straight line. There are times you're more enthused, times less enthused, more difficulty, less difficulty, more challenges, less challenges. But as we persevere, we find that those challenges are actually sometimes the greatest opportunity for growth. And often we learn that in retrospect. Isn't that the truth? If we go through some difficulty, if we go through a great challenge, sometimes when you're in it, very difficult to process it, to introspect and see, what is Krishna trying to teach me? What is my guru trying to teach me through this instance? But in retrospect, then it can come into place. So this chanting of Hare Krishna, this process of bhakti yoga is so wonderful that if you practice it, you will see your perspective changing and growing and blossoming to the extent that you will feel gratitude. Like an old woman like me, I have nothing in my heart but gratitude for all the challenges, for all the obstacles, for all the difficulties, for all the ecstatic experiences, the mystical experiences. I feel so grateful that I've been somehow, despite my low birth, I was given the opportunity to actually come to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Krishna consciousness movement and to actually try to make progress in it. And I feel so blessed and so grateful. And I thank all of you for allowing me to share this little bit of information about that. I had decided that I would just speak extemporaneously about my own life and my journey in Krishna consciousness. And I hope I haven't gone on too long about it. But thank you.
This is so beautiful. Dinatarini Prabhu, you emphasize so many beautiful points that we've been getting these comments. It's just everybody feels so inspired. You know, how beautifully the 3 points of Icha, Nishcha, and Dharya that Srila Prabhupada wrote to you right in the beginning.
Yes.
And then your close association with Yamuna Prabhu. And just, I literally, while hearing your story, I'm getting goosebumps. And we have devotees just eagerly waiting for the book.
Yes,
Thank you.
this is the advanced copy of the book, Yamuna Devi, The Art of the Study of Seva Puja. We've been working on it for 2 years. It's being printed in Delhi, so that's why there is some delay because of everything that's going on there. But again, that harkens back to to Yamuna Devi's dedication to Srila Prabhupada. I think you've probably heard and seen in her own memoir that Srila Prabhupada told her once that if you don't teach to others what I have given you, you will become envious. And Yamuna always held that deeply within her heart. She was always so generous about giving whatever she could to others, and that's why she wrote Lord Krishna's Cuisine, and um, that's why we're now presenting this the study of Seva Puja, because just as Srila Prabhupada asked Yamuna to study cooking, he also asked her to study deity worship, and especially in her early years in India. And so this book is actually her early studies of deity worship. So we're very happy that we were able to bring that together, and hopefully later this summer it will be available.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that and for all the work that you've been putting into these books.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful legacy that you are leaving for us. You know, you were mentioning how Srila felt protected by Srila Prabhupada constantly. And, you know, such an important aspect of Krishna consciousness. Oftentimes we hear about, uh, you know, the women should be protected.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the true protection is what Srila Prabhupada was giving you all, the opportunity to
Yes.
engage
Yes.
in using all your talents in Krishna's service. Such a beautiful point. So tell us a little bit more about um, that little picture frame you have back there. I see.
Srila Prabhupada's shoes. You see, uh, there. There's a very sweet story about those shoes. I joke that I stole them from Srila Prabhupada. But what actually happened was during that time in Vrindavan, um, I was his shopper. So every day I would go to the market, I would get the sabjis and the fruits and whatever, and then Yamuna or someone else would cook. And I noticed that Srila Prabhupada was wearing these chappals every time he would leave to go to use the bathroom facilities. And then he would come back and he would place them there again. And it just so happened that one day I was in the market and I saw these same shoes, saw these same chappals. And I thought, what, I'll never get any mercy like this from Srila Prabhupada. So what would be the harm if I bought these shoes and just replaced them with the shoes he had been wearing? And I did that. I bought them and I replaced them and took these shoes away. And Srila Prabhupada walked in the new shoes the next day, and he never said anything, but unfortunately I did. And so several devotees came up to me and asked me to do the same thing for them. So they would go and buy the shoes and put them there for 24 hours and then exchange them and give them to the devotee. So that's how that went. We did that for a few days, like that. But
Oh my goodness.
yeah, back to the point about protection. There's a very interesting dichotomy there because, as I said, during this very difficult time, there was a lot of blowback against us because the sannyasis were becoming very powerful at that time within ISKCON. And again, I reiterate, they are very young. We're all still very young. But Srila Prabhupada was pushing them to remain strong and to go out and distribute the books and to go out and preach, very strongly. And that was his main focus. Srila Prabhupada, I always had the understanding that Srila Prabhupada knew his time was limited in this, within this world. And he wanted to get as many books out as he could. This was his main focus. So he wanted to keep the men encouraged, and especially the sannyasis who were doing so much preaching, so much book distribution. But at the same time, he wanted to make sure that we knew that we were recipients of his mercy as well, and that he approved of what we were doing and our position. And he made that very clear to us. So we were never in any doubt. Others may have been, but we were never in any doubt. And therefore, we remained very strong in our sadhana, remained very strong in our service because of that.
Such a beautiful point, Dinatarini Prabhu. We have questions coming in now. I'm going to highlight one question right here. This is from Lokapavani Devi, and she's asking, what would be your message to the women today for their spiritual lives?
It seems like an easy question, but actually it's very difficult because it would be depending upon what their particular situation was. I think that generalizing, I would say that if you put your faith in Krishna, if you put your faith in your spiritual master, if you put your faith in Vaishnavas, that ultimately what we're hoping is to see the instruction within, or to see the stream of what we are to learn, how we are to grow within any situation we find ourselves in. So whether you're a grihasta, whether you are old like me, whatever situation you're in, we're told in Lord Kapila's instructions to his mother Devahuti, we're told to remain in whatever condition we're in. Srila Prabhupada reiterated this and many times. And that means not that we just remain to struggle, but that we remain to try to glean what the meaning of whatever we're going through, that's going to help push us forward. Because the sooner that we understand the meaning of a particular challenge, what it is that I'm supposed to learn from that to grow, because we're going, Ado, Shada, Sadhu, Sangha, Bhajana, Priya, Anartha, Nivritti. We're hoping to clear the dust from the heart to Anartha, Nivritti. And so to do that, we have to go through challenges. It's just the nature of the process. And if we just see them, this is a terrible situation, I'm suffering, I don't want this anymore, then we really haven't learned anything. But if we can go through something and say, what is it that Krishna wants me to imbibe from this particular circumstance? And then reflect on that and introspect and chant on it and learn from it, then you'll find that growth comes. It's like a budding flower, it blooms and blooms and blossoms and blossoms. And then ultimately, once you've learned from that particular challenge, you don't have to approach it anymore. It's in your eternal bank account.
So beautiful. And we have Manjuwali Prabhu, and she's making a comment, and she's saying, thank you so much, Dinatarini Devi. Your sharing is so heartwarming bring Srila Prabhupada's memory alive.
Haribol, dear Manjwali, I love you.
And you're right, we learned so much through challenges, humble
Yes.
Manjuali. We have Mahatma Devi, and she's sharing, and I couldn't agree more. What a life of surrender and dedication. Truly, such a wonderful example and figure for us, uh, younger generation, to keep in mind. It's so important to have association like this and to have examples like yourself and so many other of your god sisters that have dedicated their lives. It gives us such hope and inspiration. Um, and just hearing from you the gratitude that even when you were talking about the challenges that that the women had, it didn't make you bitter. It just made you stronger.
Yes.
Made you stronger in your Krishna consciousness. You just decided to dedicate and go deeper in your service. And with Srila Prabhupada's association, it's just so beautiful and so inspirational. We're
Thank you.
grateful to have you here. And I just want to request on behalf of all the Vaishnavis and Vaishnavas and the devotees and the future generations, please don't go into hiding.
Oh,
Please continue to come on such platforms to share this wealth that you have.
oh, thank you very much. I'm grateful that you had me, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak about Srila Prabhupada, to speak about Yamuna Devi and our beloved Vaishnavas. It's actually given me great joy.
So, on behalf of all the second generation or the generations to come, I want to ask you, what is one thing, or how can we develop this personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada or the previous acharyas? I know just before the show, you were mentioning to me that in your pendant, you have a piece of the shoe.
Yes.
Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur.
Yes. I
And
feel a very deep connection with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Many years ago, I began doing research in India on women Vaishnavis of our disciplic succession of our line, and that expanded into, finally, after a long period of time, delving deeply into the Vaishnavas in our Gaudiya Vaishnava disciplic succession coming from the six Goswamis on down. And I truly think that changed me in a very deep way, because I felt then connected not just to Srila Prabhupada, but I felt connected to the entire disciplic succession and felt their protection as well, and their mercy and their compassion as well. And anyone who knows me knows that whenever I do go to Vrindavan, you usually find me at one of the samadhis of our Vaishnavacharyas. I spend a lot of time there because I feel their mercy can be felt there. And their mercy, is, Srila Prabhupada used to say that the grandfather is often more merciful than the father. So we should pray to Srila Bhakti said, in my case, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, for his mercy, which I felt very strongly in my life. And the same is for your second generation. You should see Srila Prabhupada in that same light. That he can bestow endless compassion and mercy, kindness, help in so many ways upon you through your connection to your own guru.
The highlight of this talk was this wonderful relationship and that you shared with Yamuna Prabhu and the other god sisters. How important is it to develop such friendships?
It's interesting. I was reading about this in the same in the same history of Lord Kapila with his mother. And Srila Prabhupada said something very interesting in a purport. Friendship should be cemented between persons with mutual interests and understanding. The devotee should avoid a person whose character is not fixed in the standard understanding, even though he may be a Vaishnava or a devotee of Krishna. If his character is not correctly representative, then he should be avoided. One should steadily control the senses and the mind and strictly follow the rules and regulation, and he should make friendship with persons of the same standard. So I think this is an extremely important point. I think it is pivotal, because it doesn't mean that we're rude or that we're not friendly to every devotee, because at the basis of any relationship with any devotee is respect. But we should be able to seek out those devotees who are of the same mindset as we are, and devotees who are not going to find fault, who you can reveal your mind to, develop an intimate relationship with. And I've been so fortunate in life that there's a few of those in my life, and especially Yamuna for 37 years as my companion. Learned so much from her. So for all of us, these devotee relationships are imperative. They actually can lift us up wonderfully in our devotional life.
Beautiful. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for this sharing.
You're most welcome.
And for your life of devotion.
Thank you very much.
Such an inspiration.
My obeisances to all the devotees. Thank you so much. I'm honored that I get to speak about Srila Prabhupada and Yamuna Devi.
Tell us one last pastime, just for this show. But we want to hear so much from you that here we have devotees posting comments, some more pastimes. Thank you so much for sharing, and so many wonderful comments coming in, and somebody saying, please don't go into hiding again.
Okay. Thank you.
Please tell us another sweet memory that you have of Srila Prabhupada. Just to.
I was speaking earlier about how Srila Prabhupada had such a wonderful sense of humor. And when we were one time on the roof in Mumbai, he was sitting there, and there was this devotee, Vishal Das. And Vishal Das was very enthusiastic. Whenever he would come into Srila Prabhupada's presence, no matter who Srila Prabhupada was speaking to or what was going on, he would fall down prostrate and very loudly chant, Nama Om Vishnu Padai, very loud. So this one night he came in, and Srila Prabhupada was sitting in his chair. I'll never forget his look. Sometimes it was a very large asana. If you see pictures, there's big white pillows, and sometimes he would sit crossways with his legs over the pillow, and sometimes he would, different positions. So this one night, Vishal Das came in, and he was standing like that, and he was a bit of an entrepreneur. He had some funds, and Srila Prabhupada decided to joke with him. And so as he was down offering obeisances, he got up and he said, Srila Prabhupada, your mercy is everything, and I want your mercy. Please tell me what I must do to get your mercy. And Srila Prabhupada was picking his teeth. And he looked over at him very casually and he said, you want my mercy? And Vishal said, oh, yes, Srila Prabhupada. He was very, very enthusiastic. Oh, yes, Srila Prabhupada. He said, then give me all your money. And he kind of, stepped back a little bit. And then Srila Prabhupada looked at him again and he said, the more money you give me, the more mercy I'll give you. And everyone laughed. It just shows his humor, that he had this wonderful sense of humor, this wonderful repartee, his ability to connect and read the devotees, the consciousness. He could see right through. Everyone said that they felt Srila Prabhupada could see right through them. And I think we all felt that as well, very much. But it's just an example of his humor, his sense of humor.
Thank you so much, Dinatarini Prabhu. That was so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
I can totally visualize Srila Prabhupada there.
Yeah.
Some of those pictures.
Yes.
Thank you again
Most
for your
welcome.
sharing and truly for your life of devotion.
Thank you all so much.
Such
All
an
glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Right. Thank you so much to all our viewers for your active participation and for those wonderful questions and comments that are pouring in. Yes, when the book comes out and is released, we will be sending a newsletter and links. Also, we will have Shamasaki will post a link to Yamuna Devi, the Unalloyed Devotion, right here in the chat box, and also for the Bond of Love. So whenever possible, try to get these books. They're really, truly to be treasured. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This was
Hare Krishna.
a very quick 1 hour, Dinatarini Prabhu. You have to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And please let us see you on many wonderful platforms. We have Sadhavi Sangha, that wonderful devotees from South Africa are also created a community where Vaishnavis are sharing. And then Rukmini Prabhu's shows. So please you're there everywhere so we can get as much as we possibly can get of your association.
We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone,
Hare Krishna.
for joining us. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai. Mancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna.